My name is Peter Brenner, and I'm from Germany. I came here in 1962, and I used to live in the city in Manhattan for about 10 years. And in 1972, I moved with my friend. We bought this house and we moved up here to Dobbs Ferry. I was born in Germany, 1938. It's before the Second World War. I lived in a very small town. The war actually didn't affect us too much in the early years, but then in the later years, like 43, 44, 45, life became very difficult in Germany. And I did not live with my mother. I lived with my mother's sister, my stepmother, because the government in Germany at that time deemed my mother unqualified to raise a child because she was very young when I was born, and that's the Nazi regime in those days. They had very strict rules. So for a very young girl, like a 17-year-old girl, to have a child in wedlock was kind of scandalous in those days, and also judged socially not acceptable. So her sister took me in as a foster child, which was fine. I had a pretty good childhood, except that in 46, my foster mother and her child and myself, we all contacted tuberculosis, which a lot of people had in Germany in those days. My real mother also had tuberculosis, and several other members of the extended family. And so we all sent away to a sanatorium, but in those days there was no medicine for tuberculosis. The only thing that had as a cure, you went to the sanatorium and took a lot of rest, but I was the only one who survived. My stepmother and her daughter, they both died and I survived. I had no family, so to speak of. The state sent me to an orphanage in Germany, and I spent there 4 years in an orphanage with 120 other kids. Interesting life. It's not family, but they feed you and they clothe you and they house you. But we also went to school there. You went to school until the 8th grade, and then you had to leave. And then what they did, they tried to find jobs for all the kids, and they found a job for me in a little hotel, and I became a cook. And I met somebody in 1961, a young fellow who was just leaving for the United States. And we became very friendly. And when he came here to New York, he wrote to me and asked me if I would like to come also. And I said, sure. In those days, you needed two people who became surrogates for you. He supplied, so I came in 1962. It's just an alarm kind of to see something new. I thought it was very exciting going to the United States.
I met him about 12 years ago, and I can remember the exact circumstances when I met him. I was in the process of moving into my new house, which happened to be 2 doors down from him. And it was the day before I moved in, so I was there looking around at the house. And he was at the end of the street, and he was kind of just looking over at me. Wasn't quite sure if I was the person that was moving into the house, but I could see he was a little bit reserved. But he finally came over and he said, "Hi, my name is Peter." And we talked for a little bit, and he just said, "If you need anything, please come up. I live up at the house, top of the street with my friend Elliot. And if you would like, if you need something, just let me know." And so I moved in a few days later, and then we became friends. I remember he came over that first day. He actually brought it was a little rabbit. a ceramic rabbit he brought over for me as a little housewarming gift. And he brought Elliot with him at that point. And then we just became instant friends right from that moment.
I met Elliot in 1968. Got a very nice job in a restaurant in the Time of Life building. Really nice restaurant. And I progressed there. I was promoted, and Elliot came up with some friends, and I guess he was very impressed with me. And we were very busy that night. I hardly paid any attention to him, but he gave me his card when he left. So I called him the next day, and that's how we started a very, very long friendship. Elliot lived in Brooklyn. He was professor of speech, and he also was chairman of the speech department at LIU. And I worked in the city, and I had an apartment in the city. So we had that arrangements that we would see each other on the weekend and so on. So we would go on vacation. And then one thing led to another. We came one time up here in this area, and we kind of liked it, so we decided, why can't we live up here? And then we looked for a house, and we found this house. We liked the house, so we bought a house in 1971, and we moved in November 4th, 1971. So it would have been 40 years this past November that we would have, I live in here, but we would have lived together in this house. But Elliot isn't with us anymore. He passed away a couple of years ago. He had Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease, so he was ill for many years, something like 6-7 years. It dragged on for a long time, his illness. But we would have been together actually 43 years this coming May. 44 years this coming May that we knew each other. It's a long life together.
You know, he never actually had said anything about the basis of their relationship. He always they both always referred to each other as friends. This is my good friend Elliot, this is my good friend Peter. But I always knew. It was apparent they lived together.
Was there ever a time that you actually called him your boyfriend or husband?
No, we never, neither Elliot nor I, we didn't use these terminologies like husband, and so we were just we called ourselves companions and friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think like I said, I think a lot of it had to do, well, first of all, looking at Peter's background, he, was born in Germany. He was raised during the war, and at a time that it was actually illegal to be homosexual. So that was sort of ingrained in him, I think, very early on. And so there, when you grow up like that, you're in fear of what the repercussions would be about coming out and being who you really are. I think it becomes ingrained in you over time. He had talked about, when he was younger, living in Germany, when they would say horrible things about people who were homosexuals. So, and he didn't have anyone to talk to about this. So to him it was a big secret very early on. And I think when he met Elliot was a little bit older than him, and I think that Elliot just really didn't want to ever, he valued his friendships, but was maybe fearful of maybe judgment that could be that could come about as a result of disclosing their relationship.
When I lived in Germany, there still was a paragraph in the criminal code that criminalized the relationship between two men, not between women. That's the interesting thing, but sexual relationship between men, even adult men, and by consent. It was against the law, and it was punished rather severely. And in those days when I was younger, the general public's opinion about us was rather, I would almost say miserable, very derogatory, and we were called all sorts of names. So most men in those days kept their homosexuality to themselves and wouldn't discuss. I never discussed it with anybody, including my mother. And most people never knew I was gay. I was talked about my girlfriends, and so it was just, I felt my life was more important, so I just didn't talk about it.
Was there ever a time that you actually called him your boyfriend or husband?
No. We never, neither Elliot nor I, we didn't use these terminologies like husband, and so we were just we called ourselves companions and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it's not so important, you know. What's important is the kind of relationship you have, and most people knew us as friends and living together, so it was really irrelevant. And for Elliot and me, we were just friends. We had a very an open life. I don't know, should I call it open life? We just lived together and did everything together. And most of our friends accepted it. We actually never run into a problem that people would question two guys living together. We had some problems when we bought this house and we tried to get a mortgage. There were several banks that would not give us a mortgage. And one bank, they were very clearly and said, we don't give mortgages to two gentlemen. But then we found a company here in Westchester, and they gave us a mortgage almost instantly. Even with marriage, a lot of these details, it's a gray area where you're married, but your rights are not clearly laid out, because the state gives us rights, but the federal government takes a lot of the rights away. So for two gay men, or for lesbians too, or single people, if you want to be sure that all of your arrangements are taken care of properly, you have to write down everything and have it legally notarized and finalized.
Okay. I think that's all. Unless you want to add anything else. We're good. Thank you so much.
Okay. I hope it comes out.
It'll come out.
Okay.
I'll